me to talk today. It's a great opportunity. Today, I'm going to be telling you a little bit about some Sasanian coins, but not just any Sasanian coins, Georgian-Sasanian coins. So, of course, that is the Tbilisi variety, not the Atlanta version. A little bit more about myself while I get the presentation up. So I am from Canada. I did my BA at Carleton University and then my master's at University College London, both of which in archaeology. And now I am at Leiden University in order to do my PhD, focusing mostly on the Middle East and Central Asia, in more looking at economics and issues of trade and center and periphery. Now, what I will be presenting to you today was my master's thesis. So I've called it the Imitation Game because I'm going to be talking to you about some imitations. Or are they? That's for you to decide. So just to set the stage for those unfamiliar with late antiquity around this time period and this region. So a key aspect here is the conflict between the Romans and Sasanians, lasting basically 400 years and culminating in the emergence of Islam and the defeat of both. And one area that now encompasses what is now the countries of Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Georgia plays a key role because basically desert, not desert. It is a key highway if you want to get through this region. Now, of course, when I say Georgia and Armenia, I recognize that in late antiquity that this was actually several smaller kingdoms. I am simply saying Georgia now in order for ease of use. And of course, this impact that this war actually had a very significant impact on the political and religious structure of both Armenia, Georgia, and the Caucasus region as a whole. So what does this have to do with numismatics? We have here what we would consider a fairly normal Hormuz IV drachma, silver. They're very common. Nothing particularly special about it, other than that it's a nice silver coin. But then we get this happens. This is also technically a drachma of Hormuz IV. But as you can see looking at it, there's something not quite right about it. We've got some weird lettering here. The face is a little bit different. This looks like it could be an imitation. And this is where we get into the details. So these are known as Georgian-Sasanian coins or Georgian-Sasanian imitations. There's only about 40 known specimens, only about 20 of which have been accounted for. The rest have gone off in various collections. We don't really know where they are. There's reports of some of these coins being excavated in construction sites, and then they disappear. So we've got about 40 that we know of, and only 20 that we actually know where they are. Now, they're often seen as imitations, and they're seen as a reflection of a newfound religious and political independence. So for many people, they see this as this time period, especially as basically the start of Georgia as a nation, both ethnically and politically. This is kind of the first time we really see an independent Georgia forming on its own. So this brings us to the question, is the existence of a particular group of Georgian-Sasanian coins an indicator of Georgian strive for independence within the Sasanian Empire? The point of this is I'm going to show how Georgian-Sasanian coinage holds a role not just in economics, but in propaganda. And what this research will attempt to understand is this unique style that appears around the 6th century. So we've got a few different variations here. I'm going to go over them briefly, and then I'll go into a little more detail about some of them a little bit later. So first we get some that have the Georgian letters basically for G and N. So like this, GN. We also have some that have, as opposed to a fire temple, they've got a cross on the reverse. We've got a couple that have a J and an O, or the Georgian letters, which would indicate J and O. We've got some that have a cross on the obverse, where there'd usually be the hair ball for the Sasanian Shah's hair. And then we also have a couple that have these letters, which spell out in make sure I get this right, Asom Tavruli lettering, so the old Georgian alphabet. They spell it SPNS, which would we presume to mean Stephanos, who was one of the princes. Now, as far as typology, on the left here, we have the basic typology that was made by Dr. Tsatselia, who was one of the first to really look at these coins. We have type 1, type 2A, type 2B, 3A, 3B, and then we also have 4A and 4B. Now, 4A and 4B, I am in complete agreement with her that this is Stephanos. This is one of them is an earlier version, one of them is a later version. With the rest of them, though, I think we need to look at with a lot more detail and actually recognize that the one that has the hairball, I'll call it the cross behind instead of the hairball, potentially has a very different meaning to the one that has the cross on the reverse. Also, as far as some that have the monogram, the G in the end, some have it more towards the top, some have it on the bottom on about the 4 and 5 o'clock position. I think these variations are worth recognizing and worth looking at in more detail. Now, further to this, we have a number of mints that appear. Some of these, the WRC/WLC/WRCH, nobody really knows where it is. It's worth considering it could be a mint in Georgia. And then additionally, we have the ZWZWN mint, which is another one we don't really know where it is. Some have suggested it could be a military mint. I would be willing to propose that this could potentially be a military mint and a mobile one at that. So one that they would have brought with the army specifically for combat in the Caucasus region, especially because we do know combat stopped for a long period of time there. Now, with our dies for this, we actually do have at least 2 die matches. We have this one right here, which is in the museum in Prague. And then we also have this one, which is from the National Museum in Georgia. So we have at least 2 die matches, meaning we can at least link 2 of these coins together that they were minted at the same time. We also have this interesting one, which is in the Hermitage's collection, where it appears that you've got 2 crosses. Now, I don't believe that this is a counter strike or a counter mark because there's no punch sign anywhere else. It's in a very specific part. So this could potentially be an error. It's worth considering it as an error or something similar. Now, what that means, though, is also you're dealing with coins that were minted over a long period of time. If you have some that have errors and some that aren't, which would also then indicate at least 2 dies are coming from this one. And of course, we have to think, why are these coins being minted? This would be one of the coins that we had where it's the Stephanos coins. Now, when we look at the reigns, we have 2 main kind of princes or Georgian kings here. We have Guram or Gurgen and Stephanos I. Now, Guram or Gurgen's reign matches that of Hormuz IV. And we can see a lot of the coins that are minted with the GN for Gurgen or Guram match up with the style of Hormuz IV coins. The Stephanos coins all match up with a style more of Khusro II. If we are truly to see this as double strike. Yes, thank you, Patrick. Die shift, another good thinking. Where was I? Right. Where I was going with this is that if they are changing their coins in order to reflect a new Shah, that is potentially not just a reflection of what's circulating, but political influence. So a key point is remembered as well is Stephanos I, during the war, was killed by the Byzantine king. He was flayed alive once the Byzantines moved and captured Tiflis, or what we now call Tbilisi. Stephanos was a supporter of the Sasanian Shah. There's sufficient evidence to indicate that the Georgians during his reign were very much on the Sasanian side. So we see there's a lot of these Stephanos coins. Why would they be taking this effort to mint their own coinage if they're that heavily involved with one particular political side? Then we also have the Guram versus Gurgan. Now, Guram is the Georgian name and pronunciation. Gurgan is more of the international version. That's the version that would have been used for any sort of diplomacy or international text. Sorry, Peter, I saw your comment, and don't worry, I'm getting to that. Now, the reason I highlight this Gurgan is the fact that we have a G and an N, not a G and an M. So the fact that they're using the international spelling or the international term, to me, would indicate more that this is not intended for a local usage, but for an international one. We do actually have one of these Gurgan coins found in Babylon. It's the only one that was found, but it's been lost, so we don't know what happened to it. And of course, we also have to consider that Persian culture had a lot of influence in Georgia. We know that their script is partially based on Georgian. We know that several of the earlier Georgian dynasties were also linked with the Parthian and then Sasanian dynasties. We have cults of Mithras and Zoroastrianism in Georgia, dating from very early on. So again, there seems to be a lot of evidence to indicate that the Georgians were more closely linked with the Sasanians in Persia than to be against them. Now, I was able to get some XRF data done. So this hopefully will help to answer Peter's question. And I wasn't able to get 40 of them done, unfortunately. I think I was able to get 16 of them done. This is from the Bode Museum and the National Museum in Georgia. Now, as far as the quality, you can see most of them are coming up over 90%. There's a fairly decent result there as far as the quality of them. Except for one of them, I think. Don't know what happened with that one. And then when we compare that to, there we go. Do a little bit of comparison here. You can see it comes up quite high. But when we compare that to what we would call centrally minted Sasanian coins and then some Arab Sasanian coins, these were taken from the Museum of Islamic Art in Doha, where I was able to do a little bit of work. We see that the Georgian Sasanian coins do fit into kind of a standard mold for Sasanian coinage. They are of high quality. These are not poorly made coins. Even when we look at this sort of graph, we can see that the Georgian Sasanian ones do come up well within the range of what we call normal Sasanian coins, as opposed to, say, Arab Sasanian. And of course, we know that these aren't the only coins like this that have showed up. We have a Merv type, which I believe we only have 2 copies of, that have a cross on one side. We also have various other Southeast Asian texts that appear on some Sasanian coinage. And in conclusion, one thing I really want to stress from this is I think a lot of the opinions of this coinage has been caused by a lot of the perception of like East versus West, Rome versus Persia, Christianity versus Zoroastrianism. Obviously, people have thought that the coins must fit into this viewpoint. And I don't think this is the case. I think these coins carry a lot of indicators of being centrally minted. So whether they were minted in the Sasanian heartland and then shipped, or minted in, say, Tbilisi under Sasanian supervision, or the dies were minted or created in, Ctesiphon or the Sasanian heartland and then shipped, we can't know for certain. But I think there's a lot here to indicate that influence. Now, the next chapter, I would like to continue this research on, and I think the next thing would be more die studies. So I'd like to see if I can physically get a hold of some of these coins and see if there's any more die studies. I'd like to try and do more XRF analysis, so like the Prague coin and the ones in the Hermitage. No XRF has been done on them. And I'd like to see if maybe we can find some more ways to figure out what these coins are. Are they just imitations? Are they a way of kind of showing Sasanian authority with a Georgian flair? I think it's worth investigating. So, thank you for listening to me today. I hope everyone learned a little bit, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
If there are no questions coming up immediately, one question that I had at the beginning of the presentation, and I can't say that it is completely solved, is wouldn't you have expected some imitation of Roman coins as well?
Well, this is what's interesting as well. Why weren't they imitating Roman coins? It could be that they were more tied with Sasanian Iran, and that's why I think this is what's occurring. The Sasanian Shahs are letting them do this. They're saying, okay, we're going to give you a little bit of autonomy. You could put your cross on your coins, you could put your letters, support us. I imagine that maybe that was part of the deal. And we do know the Sasanians did quite well in Georgia, and then they got pushed back, and then they take it again and push back. So I think this is that control that we're seeing.
Well, there's a lot of positive feedback coming in. If anybody is interested in pursuing this a little bit, can you recommend books that actually can be found?
There's a little bit in Georgian and in Russian. Anything from Medea Tsotselia would be your best bet. Konstantin Krasnov has written a little bit as well. It's not something that's been written about tremendously, and this is part of why I read this, or why I focused on this for my master's, was the realization of nobody else is looking at this. This is worth it.
And then also, here's the key question I have. We have a member of World of Coins who specializes in the Celtic coins of the Balkans. And he has been at pains to make the point that the Celts were imitating Roman coins, but doing so with their own cultural approach. And that approach gave imitations that looked less and less like the original and more like Celtic coins in other parts of the world. I think I see some of that in the examples that you have given, but would it be possible to find further clues for that sort of a theory in other pieces of art from the region?
I do think it's possible. I think one of the underlying issues with something like this is I don't think we will ever find the definitive proof. I mean, unless we find, a horde of 1,000 of these with a couple die stamps, there's never really going to be something concrete. I know within the art of Georgia, you definitely see some kind of Persian-Sasanian influence, especially when you look at some Tbilisi and etc., the surrounding area. So, yeah, I don't know. I see a question from Anthony, though. Why are there so few specimens left? It's a good question. I don't think there is a definitive answer for that one as well. I know there were a number of specimens that have been found, but they were lost because they were found during construction and renovation, and they got separated, by the diggers basically. So we don't really know. Are there so few because maybe these coins weren't used for very long? Like this might have been a little bit of an experiment that wasn't continued. We don't really know.
That is a perfectly good. There's another question coming in, Jonathan.
Are there no coins from the Vikings in the silver they brought up? As far as Sasanian or Georgian-Sasanian, to my knowledge, none have been found, unless they've been found very recently and I didn't get the email. Now, to my knowledge, none.
Well, the Normans from Kiev were definitely on the Roman side, if on any side, but they would not have been too happy with the Persians on the other side.
Yeah, I agree. One of the problems with this project was basically that there are so many question marks that I don't think we'll ever really have an answer for, unless we get that big horde find that we're all secretly hoping for.
Yeah, Alex is making the good point that the Vikings did not come to Kiev until later. Well, that's their fault then.
I know.
At least it's something that I don't get blamed for. Well, Jonathan, that was extremely